My brother destroyed everything, academic glory, my first love, even my sense of self. Then he slept with my wife. Now, after years of silence, with mom and dad gone, he's back, and he wants what's rightfully his. Growing up, it was always Liam, that straight A's, debate champion, varsity quarterback. Liam was the golden boy, and I was just Ben, Liam's slightly awkward, less athletic, academically inclined, but not golden younger brother. It wasn't that my parents loved him more, not exactly, but Liam just shone. He had this effortless charisma, this way of drawing people to him like moths to a flame. He was the sun, and I was just a dusty little planet orbiting him. I didn't resent him, not at first. I admired him. I wanted to be him, or at least a sliver of him. I tried to emulate his confidence, his easy charm, but it never quite worked. I was always just me. Our house wasn't unhappy. It was just imbalanced. Liam soaked up all the attention, all the praise. My achievements felt muted. Somehow, a good grade on a history paper? That's nice, Ben. Liam just got offered an internship at a prestigious law firm. A local art show acceptance? Wonderful, dear. Liam's team just won the regional championships. It was a constant, subtle erosion of my self-worth, like water slowly carving a canyon through solid rock. I found solace in my studies, in my art. I excelled in history, losing myself in the past, trying to find patterns, meanings that escaped me in the present. I poured my emotions onto canvases, creating vibrant, often abstract, landscapes that reflected the turbulent landscape of my own mind. My haven, the one place I felt truly seen and understood, was in my art class. That's where I met Sarah. Sarah was different. She wasn't impressed by Liam's trophies or his perfect GPA. She saw me. She saw the quiet intensity in my eyes, the passion in my brushstrokes. She saw the sadness I tried so hard to hide. We bonded over late-night study sessions fueled by cheap coffee and shared dreams. We talked for hours about art, history, life, and everything in between. She understood my frustrations, my insecurities, my deep-seated need to prove myself. Sarah became my anchor, my lifeline. She was the only person who made me feel like I was enough, just as I was. Then came senior year. The pressure was immense. Liam, of course, was already accepted into Harvard Law. He was practically a shoo-in for valedictorian. The expectations on him were sky-high, and he seemed to thrive under the weight of them. But beneath the surface, I started to see cracks. Liam, the golden boy, was starting to tarnish. He was drinking more, staying out later, snapping at mom and dad for the smallest things. He started confiding in me, something he rarely did. He told me about the crushing pressure he felt, the fear of failing to live up to everyone's expectations. He told me he was exhausted, that he didn't even want to be a lawyer, he wanted to be a musician. I was surprised, shocked even. I never imagined Liam, the embodiment of success, could harbor such doubts. I tried to be supportive, to tell him that it was okay to change his mind, that his happiness was more important than fulfilling some preordained destiny. But he brushed me off. Don't be ridiculous, Ben. I can't just throw everything away. Everyone's counting on me. He spiraled, his grades started to slip. He lost the debate championship. He got benched from the football team for missing practices. The golden boy was crumbling before my eyes. Then came the day that changed everything. The day I found him in the garage, slumped against the workbench, surrounded by empty pill bottles. It was a blur of panicked phone calls, screaming sirens, and sterile hospital rooms. They managed to save him, but the damage was done. Liam was different after that, quieter, more withdrawn. He dropped out of the race for valedictorian, stopped talking about Harvard. He was a ghost of his former self. I tried to reach out to him, to be there for him, but he pushed me away. He blamed me. Somehow, he said I was always trying to undermine him, to sabotage his success. He accused me of being jealous, of wanting him to fail. His words cut deep. It was a betrayal of everything I thought we had. But I brushed it off, attributing it to the trauma of the overdose. I told myself he didn't mean it, that he was just hurting. Then came graduation. I was named valedictorian, a bittersweet victory that felt hollow in the face of Liam's struggles. As I stood on the stage, delivering my speech, I saw Liam in the audience. His eyes were fixed on me, filled with a mixture of anger and resentment. That night, after the graduation party, I went to Sarah's house. We sat on her porch swing, talking about the future, about college, about our dreams. I told her how scared I was, how lost I felt. I told her about Liam, about the weight of expectations, about the fear of failing. She held my hand, looked me in the eyes and said, "You're going to be okay. Ben, you're strong, you're talented, you're going to do great things." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that everything would be okay. But I was wrong, so wrong. College was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to escape the shadow of Liam, to forge my own path, to finally define myself on my own terms. I chose a small liberal arts college a few states away, drawn to its renowned history department and its thriving art scene. Sarah followed me, enrolling in the same school, and for a while it felt like we were building a new life, a better life, together. The distance seemed to do Liam good, at least initially. He started seeing a therapist, enrolled in community college, and even picked up the guitar again. He called me occasionally, his voice sounding lighter, more hopeful. He apologized for his behavior after the overdose, admitting that he had been projecting his own insecurities onto me. I was relieved. I wanted to believe that he was truly getting better, that we could rebuild our relationship, that the animosity of the past was finally behind us. But the peace was fragile. My first semester was a whirlwind of new classes, new friends, and new experiences. I threw myself into my studies, devouring everything I could about history, art, and literature. I joined the debate club, resurrected my passion for public speaking, and even started writing poetry. Sarah flourished as well. She excelled in her art classes, experimenting with different mediums, developing her own unique style. We spent hours in the studio together, sketching, painting, and critiquing each other's work. Our relationship deepened. We were inseparable, sharing everything, supporting each other's dreams. I genuinely believed that we were meant to be together. Then, Thanksgiving rolled around. I was excited to go home, to see my family, to show them how much I had grown. But as soon as I walked through the door, I could feel the tension in the air. Liam was different. He was withdrawn, irritable, and strangely secretive. He avoided eye contact, mumbled his answers, and spent most of his time locked in his room. I tried to talk to him, to ask him what was wrong, but he brushed me off. He said he was just tired, that he needed some space. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Mom and Dad seemed oblivious to Liam's behavior. They were so relieved to see him seemingly on the mend that they didn't want to rock the boat. They tiptoed around him, catering to his every whim, afraid of triggering another episode. The dynamic was stifling, suffocating. I felt like I was back in high school, reliving the same old patterns, the same old insecurities. Sarah tried to reassure me, but I couldn't shake the unease that gnawed at me. The breaking point came on Thanksgiving night. After dinner, Liam cornered me in the kitchen. He was agitated, his eyes wild and unfocused. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice low and urgent. "What is it, Liam?" I asked, bracing myself. He hesitated, then blurted out, "I messed up, Ben. I messed up bad." He proceeded to tell me a story that shattered my world. He had relapsed, he admitted he had been drinking again, taking pills, he had been spiraling out of control. And then he dropped the bomb. He told me that he had been spending time with Sarah while I was away at college, that they had been talking, hanging out, confiding in each other. He said that Sarah had been helping him through his struggles, that she had been a source of comfort and support. And then, he said that they had slept together. The words hit me like a physical blow. I staggered backward, my head spinning. I couldn't breathe. You slept with Sarah?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded, his eyes filled with shame and regret. "It was a mistake, Ben. A stupid, drunken mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen." I didn't say anything. I just stared at him, my mind reeling, trying to process the enormity of his betrayal. He reached out to me, but I flinched away. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice trembling with rage. I turned and ran out of the house, blindly stumbling through the dark, my heart shattered into a million pieces. I didn't stop running until I reached Sarah's house. I pounded on her door, my fists raw and bleeding. She answered the door, her face etched with concern. "Ben, what's wrong? What happened?" I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, my eyes filled with pain and accusation. She paled, her eyes widening in horror. "You know?" she whispered. I nodded, my voice choked with tears. "Liam told me." She didn't deny it. She just stood there, her head bowed, her shoulders slumped. "I'm so sorry, Ben," she said, her voice barely audible. "It was a mistake. I swear. It didn't mean anything." "It didn't mean anything?" I screamed, my voice cracking with emotion. "You slept with my brother. You betrayed me. How could you do that to me?" She started to cry, her tears streaming down her face. "I don't know, Ben." I was confused, vulnerable. Liam was. He was there for me when you weren't. "When I wasn't?" I repeated, incredulous. "I was at college, trying to build a future for us. How dare you say that to me?" The night dissolved into a blur of accusations, recriminations, and tears. I said things I regretted, things I could never take back. Sarah did too. By the end of the night, our relationship was over, shattered beyond repair. I left Sarah's house, feeling empty, hollowed out. I had lost everything: my brother, my girlfriend, my sense of self. I spent the rest of Thanksgiving break holed up in my room, refusing to talk to anyone. I skipped meals, ignored phone calls, and stared blankly at the ceiling. Mom and Dad tried to comfort me, but I pushed them away. I couldn't bear to face them, to see the pity in their eyes. Liam didn't try to apologize. He stayed out of my way, avoiding me like the plague. When it was time to go back to college, I felt like I was leaving a part of myself behind, a part of myself that I could never get back. The drive back to school was long and lonely. I replayed the events of the past few days over and over in my head, trying to make sense of it all. But there was no sense to be made. It was just a senseless tragedy, a betrayal of trust, a loss of innocence, a wound that would never fully heal. When I got back to my dorm room, I found a letter waiting for me. It was from Sarah. I hesitated, then opened it. The letter was short and to the point. She said she was leaving school, that she couldn't face me, that she needed to start over somewhere else. She said she was sorry. I crumpled the letter in my hand and threw it in the trash. I was alone, completely and utterly alone. And then I made a decision that would change the course of my life forever. I decided to get revenge. The immediate aftermath of the betrayal was a blur of numbness and rage. I felt like I was living in a dream, a twisted nightmare where everything I had believed in had been ripped away from me. I stopped going to classes, stopped eating, stopped sleeping. I spent my days wandering around campus like a ghost, haunted by the images of Liam and Sarah together. The desire for revenge consumed me. It was a burning, all-encompassing hunger that gnawed at my insides, driving me forward, preventing me from succumbing to despair. I needed to make them pay. I needed to make them feel the pain that I was feeling. But how? I couldn't resort to violence. That wasn't me. Besides, that would only land me in jail, and that wouldn't accomplish anything. I needed a more subtle, more calculated approach. I needed to find a way to strike at their core, to destroy their happiness, to make them regret ever crossing me. I started by gathering information. I learned everything I could about Liam's life back home. I discovered that he had dropped out of community college, that he was working a dead-end job at a gas station, that he was still struggling with his addictions. I also learned that he was still in contact with Sarah. They were just friends, according to Liam, but I didn't believe him. I knew that there was still something between them, a lingering connection that refused to be severed. The more I learned, the more my anger festered. I realized that Liam and Sarah were both miserable, both trapped in a cycle of self-destruction, and that fueled my desire for revenge even more. I needed to find a way to exploit their weaknesses, to push them over the edge. One night, while I was aimlessly surfing the internet, I stumbled upon a website dedicated to financial planning. I started reading about investments, stocks, bonds, and real estate. I realized that money was power, that financial security could buy happiness, that the lack of it could lead to despair. An idea began to form in my mind, a plan that was both audacious and potentially devastating. I decided to become rich. Not just comfortably well off, but filthy rich. I wanted to amass a fortune so vast that I could buy and sell Liam and Sarah 100 times over. I wanted to be so powerful that I could control their lives, dictate their destinies. It was a long shot. I knew. I was just a broke college student with no business experience, but I was determined to make it happen. I started by devouring every book and article I could find on finance and investing. I learned about the stock market, about venture capital, about real estate development. I spent hours studying charts, analyzing trends, and poring over financial statements. I also started networking. I attended business seminars, joined investment clubs, and cold-called wealthy alumni, seeking advice and mentorship. Most people dismissed me as a naive kid with unrealistic dreams, but a few took me seriously. They saw the fire in my eyes, the burning ambition that fueled my every move. They recognized that I was different, that I was willing to work harder and sacrifice more than anyone else. One of those people was Mr. Harding, a retired hedge fund manager who had made a fortune in the dot-com boom. He took me under his wing, teaching me the ins and outs of the financial world, sharing his secrets to success. He warned me about the risks, the pitfalls, the ethical dilemmas that I would face. He told me that the pursuit of wealth could corrupt a person, turning them into a ruthless, heartless monster. I listened to his warnings, but I didn't heed them. I was too consumed by my desire for revenge to care about the consequences. I started small, investing my meager savings in penny stocks and high-yield bonds. I made some mistakes, lost some money, but I learned from my failures. Gradually, my investments started to pay off. I doubled my money, then tripled it, then quadrupled it. I reinvested my profits, taking bigger and bolder risks. I dropped out of college, much to the dismay of my parents. I told them that I was pursuing a unique opportunity, that I was on the verge of something big. They didn't understand. They thought I was throwing my life away. They begged me to reconsider, to go back to school, to get a real job. But I refused to listen. I was on a mission, and nothing was going to stop me. Within a few years, I had become a millionaire, my investments had soared, my businesses had thrived, and my reputation had grown. I was a rising star in the financial world, admired by my peers, envied by my competitors. I had achieved my goal, I was rich. But the wealth didn't bring me happiness. It didn't fill the void in my heart. It didn't erase the pain of the past. In fact, it only amplified it. The more successful I became, the more I realized that revenge was a hollow victory. It couldn't undo the past. It couldn't bring Sarah back. It couldn't heal the wounds that Liam had inflicted. But I was too far gone to turn back. I had sacrificed everything for this, and I couldn't bear to admit that it was all for nothing. So I continued down the path of destruction, driven by a burning desire to punish Liam and Sarah for their transgressions. I started by buying up properties in their hometown, driving up the prices, and making it difficult for them to afford housing. I sabotaged Liam's job opportunities, spreading rumors about his past, and blacklisting him from potential employers. I even interfered with Sarah's art career, anonymously purchasing her paintings and then destroying them, crushing her dreams and aspirations. My actions were cruel, vindictive, and ultimately self-destructive, but I couldn't stop myself. I was addicted to the power, the control, the satisfaction of watching Liam and Sarah squirm. I had become the monster that Mr. Harding had warned me about, a ruthless, heartless creature consumed by greed and revenge. And then, one day, I received a phone call that changed everything. It was from my mother. Her voice was trembling with grief. "Ben," she said, her voice choked with tears. "Your father, he's gone." The news of my father's death hit me like a physical blow. It was as if the world suddenly tilted on its axis, throwing everything into disarray. My carefully constructed life, my meticulously planned revenge, suddenly seemed meaningless in the face of such profound loss. Dad had always been the steady hand in our family, the quiet observer, the voice of reason. He wasn't as outwardly demonstrative as Mom, but his love was a constant, unwavering presence in my life. He had always believed in me. Even when I doubted myself, he had seen my potential, even when I was consumed by anger and resentment. And now he was gone. The funeral was a somber affair. The church was packed with friends, family, and colleagues, all gathered to pay their respects to a good man. Mom was a wreck, her face pale and drawn, her eyes red and swollen. She clung to me and Liam, her grip tight and desperate, as if we were the only things anchoring her to reality. Liam surprised me. He was genuinely grieving, his usual bravado replaced by a quiet sorrow. He stayed by Mom's side throughout the service, offering her comfort and support. He even managed to say a few kind words about Dad during the eulogy. His voice choked with emotion. I tried to be there for Mom as well, but I felt distant, disconnected. My grief felt muted. Somehow, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was somehow responsible for Dad's death. that my obsession with revenge had contributed to his stress, his unhappiness. The truth was, I hadn't been a good son in recent years. I had been too consumed by my own ambitions to pay attention to my parents' needs. I had neglected their phone calls, skipped their birthdays, and rarely visited them. I had prioritized my career over my family, my revenge over my relationships, and now it was too late to make amends. After the funeral, the family gathered at our house for a reception. The atmosphere was heavy with grief and unspoken tension. I avoided Liam's gaze, unable to face the guilt and shame that washed over me whenever I looked at him. Mom, however, seemed determined to bridge the gap between us. She insisted that we sit together, reminisce about old times, and try to put the past behind us. We talked about Dad, about his love for history, his passion for gardening, his quirky sense of humor. We shared stories about our childhood, about our family vacations, about the silly arguments we used to have. For a brief moment, it felt like we were a family again, like the years of animosity and resentment had simply melted away. But the illusion didn't last. As the evening wore on, the conversation inevitably turned to the topic of Dad's will. Mom informed us that Dad had left everything to her, and that she would decide how to divide the inheritance between us. Liam's demeanor changed instantly. His grief seemed to evaporate, replaced by a calculating glint in his eyes. "So, what are you planning to do, Mom?" he asked, his voice suddenly sharp and demanding. "Are you going to split everything down the middle?" Mom hesitated. "I haven't decided yet, Liam," she said, her voice strained. "I need time to think." "Think about what?" he retorted. "It's obvious what you should do. We're both your sons. We both deserve an equal share." "It's not that simple, Liam," Mom replied, her voice trembling. "Your father and I, we had certain concerns." "Concerns?" Liam scoffed. "What kind of concerns? That I'm not responsible enough to handle money? That I'm going to blow it all on drugs and alcohol?" Mom flinched. "That's not what I meant, Liam," she said, her voice pleading. "I just want to make sure that you're taken care of." "I can take care of myself, Mom," Liam snapped. "All I want is what's rightfully mine." I remained silent, observing the exchange with a mixture of disgust and amusement. It was like watching a play unfold, a predictable drama that I had seen countless times before. Liam's greed was insatiable. He had always been obsessed with money, with status, with material possessions. He couldn't see past the dollar signs, couldn't appreciate the true value of family, of love, of human connection. The conversation escalated into a heated argument. Liam accused Mom of playing favorites, of always favoring me over him. He reminded her of all the sacrifices he had made for the family, of all the hardships he had endured. Mom tried to reason with him, to explain her concerns, but he refused to listen. He was blinded by his own entitlement, his own self-pity. Finally, Mom broke down in tears. "I can't do this anymore, Liam," she sobbed. "I just can't." She stood up and walked away, leaving Liam and me alone in the living room. The silence hung heavy between us. I could feel Liam's anger radiating towards me, like a physical force. "So," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "looks like you're going to get everything, huh? Daddy's little golden boy." I didn't respond. I just stared at him, my expression blank. "You know what, Ben?" he continued, his voice rising. "I'm not going to let you get away with this. I'm going to fight you for every penny. I'm going to make your life a living hell." He stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I sat there for a long time, alone in the darkness, contemplating the wreckage of my life. My father was dead. My mother was distraught. My brother hated me, and my carefully constructed empire of wealth and revenge was crumbling around me. I realized that I had lost my way. I had become so consumed by my own anger and resentment that I had forgotten what truly mattered in life. I had become the villain in my own story. And then, as if to punctuate my misery, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered it. "Hello," I said, my voice trembling. "Ben?" a familiar voice said on the other end. "It's Sarah." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard from her in years. "Sarah?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you want?" "I need your help, Ben," she said, her voice strained. I'm in trouble. Hearing Sarah's voice after all these years was like a ghost from the past suddenly materializing in the present. The old wounds, the old betrayals, the old feelings of love and loss all came rushing back, overwhelming me with a torrent of conflicting emotions. What kind of trouble? I asked, my voice guarded. I was wary of her motives, unsure if I could trust her. After all, she had betrayed me once before. Why should I believe her now? It's complicated, she said, her voice trembling. I can't explain it over the phone. Can we meet? Please. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to hang up, to sever the connection, to erase her from my life once and for all, but another part of me, a part that I had tried to suppress for years, was drawn to her, curious about her, desperate to know what had happened to her. Where are you? I asked, my voice softening slightly. I'm back in town, she said. I'm at the old Willow Creek Diner. Can you meet me there? In an hour. The Willow Creek Diner, it was the same place where we had shared countless late-night meals, where we had dreamed about our future together, where we had first fallen in love. The thought of returning to that place, of reliving those memories, filled me with a mixture of nostalgia and dread. Okay, I said, my voice barely audible. I'll be there. I hung up the phone, my hand trembling. I sat there for a long time, staring blankly at the wall, trying to process the events of the past few hours. My father was dead, my brother hated me, my mother was distraught, and now Sarah was back. It was like the universe was conspiring to test my limits, to push me to the breaking point. I knew that meeting Sarah was a mistake, that it would only lead to more pain, more heartache, more regrets, but I couldn't resist. I had to see her. I had to know what she wanted. I drove to the Willow Creek Diner, my mind racing. The diner looked exactly as I remembered it, with its retro decor, its Formica countertops, and its neon sign flickering in the night. I parked my car and walked inside, my heart pounding in my chest. I scanned the room, searching for Sarah. She was sitting in a booth in the back corner, her face hidden behind a curtain of long, dark hair. She looked different than I remembered, older, more worn down. The youthful exuberance that I had once loved had been replaced by a weariness, a sadness that tugged at my heart. I walked over to her booth and sat down across from her. Sarah, I said, my voice barely a whisper. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine. They were still the same beautiful, expressive eyes that I had fallen in love with years ago, but they were filled with a pain, a desperation that made my heart ache. Ben, she said, her voice trembling. Thank you for coming. What's going on, Sarah? I asked, cutting to the chase. Why did you call me? She hesitated, then took a deep breath. I'm in trouble, Ben, she said, her voice strained. Really bad trouble. She proceeded to tell me a story that was both shocking and heartbreaking. After leaving college, she had drifted from place to place, struggling to make ends meet. She had worked odd jobs, waited tables, and even dabbled in drugs and alcohol. Eventually, she had met a man, a charismatic but dangerous criminal named Victor. He had swept her off her feet, promising her a life of excitement and adventure. She had fallen for him, hard. But Victor was not who he seemed to be. He was involved in illegal activities, including drug trafficking and money laundering. He had used Sarah, manipulated her, and drawn her into his criminal world. Now she was trapped. Victor was threatening her, blackmailing her, and forcing her to participate in his schemes. She was afraid for her life. I don't know what to do, Ben, she said, her voice choked with tears. I'm desperate. I have nowhere else to turn. I listened to her story, my heart pounding in my chest. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as a lie, as a ploy to manipulate me, but I could see the fear in her eyes, the desperation in her voice. I knew that she was telling the truth. Why are you telling me this, Sarah? I asked, my voice guarded. Why come to me after all these years? Because I know you're successful, Ben, she said. I know you have money power. I need your help. You're the only one who can save me. I hesitated. I was still angry at her, still hurt by her betrayal, but I couldn't deny that I still cared about her, that I still felt a connection to her. And besides, this was an opportunity to finally exact my revenge on Liam. If I helped Sarah, I could use her to get to Victor, and if I got to Victor, I could use him to destroy Liam. Liam had always been jealous of my success. He had always resented my wealth and power. If I could somehow implicate him in Victor's criminal activities, I could ruin him, I could send him to prison. The thought filled me with a cold, calculating satisfaction. "Okay, Sarah," I said, my voice hardening. "I'll help you." Her face lit up with relief. "Thank you, Ben," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you so much. But you have to do everything I say," I added, my voice firm. "No questions asked." She nodded. Her eyes filled with gratitude. "Anything, Ben," she said. "Anything at all." I knew that I was playing a dangerous game, that I was risking everything, my career, my reputation, even my freedom, but I was willing to take the risk. I was determined to get my revenge, and I was going to use Sarah to do it. "First," I said, leaning forward, "tell me everything you know about Victor." Over the next few weeks, Sarah became my shadow. She moved into a spare room in my penthouse apartment, and I kept her under constant surveillance. I installed security cameras, hired bodyguards, and even bugged her phone. I didn't trust her completely, but I needed her. She was my key to unlocking Victor's world, and ultimately to destroying Liam. Sarah provided me with a detailed account of Victor's operations. His drug trafficking routes, his money laundering schemes, his network of corrupt officials. She even gave me access to his financial records, which I promptly handed over to my team of forensic accountants. The more I learned, the more disgusted I became. Victor was a monster, a parasite who preyed on the vulnerable and exploited the desperate. He deserved to be brought down, and I was determined to be the one to do it. But my motives weren't entirely altruistic. I still harbored a deep-seated desire for revenge. I wanted to see Liam suffer, to see him pay for his betrayal. I began to formulate a plan. I would use the information Sarah provided to expose Victor's criminal empire to the authorities, but instead of simply handing over the evidence, I would manipulate the situation to implicate Liam in Victor's activities. It was a risky maneuver, I knew, but I was confident that I could pull it off. I had the resources, the connections, and the ruthlessness to make it happen. I started by contacting a journalist friend of mine, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter named Emily. I leaked her a few juicy tidbits about Victor's operation, hinting that a prominent local businessman might be involved. Emily, always hungry for a good story, jumped at the bait. She began digging into Victor's background, uncovering a web of corruption and deceit that reached into the highest levels of government. Meanwhile, I started planting evidence that linked Liam to Victor. I anonymously donated money to Victor's charity in Liam's name. I forged emails between them discussing business deals, and I even staged a meeting between them at a local restaurant, discreetly snapping photos from a distance. It was all circumstantial, of course, but I knew that with enough pressure, the authorities would start to take notice. As the investigation intensified, Liam became increasingly nervous. He started calling me, asking me if I knew anything about what was going on. "What are you talking about, Liam?" I asked, feigning innocence. "I don't know anything about Victor or his business." "Don't play dumb with me, Ben," he said, his voice strained. "I know you're behind this, you're trying to set me up." "Why would I do that, Liam?" I asked, my voice laced with sarcasm. "I'm just trying to help you. You're the one who's getting mixed up with criminals." He hung up the phone in anger. I knew that I was pushing him to the edge, but I couldn't stop myself. I was too close to achieving my goal, to finally getting my revenge. One evening, Sarah came to me, her face pale and drawn. "Ben," she said, her voice trembling, "I can't do this anymore. I feel terrible about what we're doing to Liam." "What are you talking about, Sarah?" I asked, my voice hardening. "You're the one who wanted to bring Victor down. You're the one who told me about Liam." "I know, but I didn't realize you were going to try to destroy him," she said, her voice pleading. "He's still your brother. Ben, you can't do this to him. He betrayed me, Sarah," I said, my voice rising. "He slept with you, he ruined my life." "It was a mistake, Ben," she said. "It happened years ago, you need to let it go." "I can't let it go, Sarah," I said, my voice trembling. It's consuming me. I need to make him pay. She shook her head sadly. You're becoming a monster, Ben, she said. You're losing yourself. Her words hit me hard. I knew that she was right. I had become so consumed by my desire for revenge that I had lost sight of who I was. I looked at Sarah, her eyes filled with sadness and disappointment. I realized that I was pushing her away, just like I had pushed everyone else away in my life. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. Okay, Sarah, I said, my voice softening. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm going too far. What are you going to do, Ben? She asked, her voice hopeful. I don't know, I said. I need time to think. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the verge of making a terrible mistake, that my pursuit of revenge was leading me down a path of destruction that would ultimately consume me. I knew that I had to change course, but I didn't know how. I was too far gone, too deeply entrenched in my plan. And then, as if to make matters worse, my phone rang. It was Emily, the journalist. Ben, she said, her voice excited. I've got some big news. I just got a tip that the authorities are planning to raid Victor's headquarters tomorrow morning. And guess who they think is Victor's partner in crime? My heart sank. I knew what she was going to say. Liam, Ben, she said. They think Liam is Victor's partner in crime. The words hung in the air, heavy with dread. Liam, Victor's partner. The trap I had so carefully set was about to spring, and I was no longer sure I wanted it to. The reality of what I was about to do, potentially ruin my brother's life, crashed down on me with the force of a tidal wave. Emily? I said, my voice strained. Are you sure? Is there any doubt? The authorities are pretty confident, Ben, she said. They've been building a case for weeks, and they think they have enough evidence to make an arrest. They're going to raid Victor's headquarters at dawn, and they plan to take Liam into custody. My mind raced. I had to do something. I had to stop them. But how? Emily? I said, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to hold off on publishing your story, just for a few hours. Can you do that? She hesitated. Ben, I don't know. This is a huge story. I can't just sit on it. Please, Emily, I begged. It's a matter of life and death. Just give me a few hours to sort things out. I promise I'll make it worth your while. She sighed. Okay, Ben, she said. I'll give you a few hours, but if I don't hear from you by morning, the story is going live. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. I had bought myself some time, but not much. I had to act fast. I went to Sarah's room and knocked on the door. Sarah, I said, we need to talk. She opened the door, her face etched with concern. What's wrong, Ben? You look terrible. They're going to raid Victor's headquarters tomorrow morning, I said. And they think Liam is involved. Her eyes widened in horror. Oh no, she said. What are we going to do? We have to warn Liam, I said. We have to get him out of here. But how? She asked. He won't listen to us, he hates us. We don't have a choice, I said. We have to try. We drove to Liam's apartment, the tension in the car thick enough to cut with a knife. I rehearsed what I was going to say in my head, trying to find the right words to convince him that I was telling the truth. We arrived at his building and parked the car. As we were getting out, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A black SUV was parked across the street, its windows tinted dark. I recognized it instantly. It was an unmarked police vehicle. Sarah, I whispered. They're already here. We had to act fast. We ran to the entrance of the building and buzzed Liam's apartment. He answered the intercom, his voice groggy and suspicious. Who is it? Liam, it's Ben, I said. We need to talk. It's important. He hesitated, then buzzed us in. We raced up the stairs to his apartment and pounded on the door. He opened the door, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. What do you want, Ben? He asked, his voice hostile. Liam, you're in danger, I said. The police are coming to arrest you. You need to get out of here. He stared at me, his expression incredulous. What are you talking about? He said. Why would the police arrest me? They think you're involved with Victor, I said. They think you're his partner in crime." He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You're crazy, Ben," he said. "This is all your fault. You set me up." "I know, Liam," I said. "And I'm sorry. But we don't have time to argue. You need to trust me. You need to get out of here now." Suddenly, we heard a loud banging on the door. "Police! Open up!" a voice shouted. Liam's face turned white with terror. "It's too late," he said, his voice trembling. "They're here." I grabbed his arm. "Come on, Liam," I said. "There's still time, we can get out of here." I pulled him towards the back of the apartment, towards a fire escape that led to the alley below. We burst out onto the fire escape and started climbing down, our hearts pounding in our chests. As we reached the bottom, we heard the sound of sirens approaching. "Come on, Liam," I said. "We have to run." We sprinted down the alley, dodging garbage cans and stray cats. We could hear the police officers shouting behind us. We reached the end of the alley and emerged onto a busy street. We blended into the crowd, trying to disappear from sight. "Where are we going?" Liam asked, his voice breathless. "I don't know," I said. "But we need to find a place to hide." Just then, I saw something that made my heart sink. A police car was approaching, its lights flashing, its siren blaring. "Liam," I said, "run." We sprinted in opposite directions, trying to evade the police. I could hear Liam's footsteps behind me, growing fainter and fainter. I ran as fast as I could, my lungs burning, my legs aching. I knew that I couldn't outrun the police forever. Suddenly, I stumbled and fell, hitting the pavement hard. My head slammed against the ground, and I saw stars. I lay there for a moment, dazed and disoriented. As I tried to get up, I saw a pair of black shoes standing in front of me. I looked up and saw a police officer, his face grim and determined. "It's over," he said, his voice cold and authoritative. "You're under arrest." And then everything went black. I woke up in a cold, sterile jail cell. The memories of the previous night flooded back, and a wave of despair washed over me. I was in custody, facing serious charges. My reputation was ruined. My life was in shambles. But worse than that, I had failed. I had failed to protect Liam. I had failed to get my revenge, and I had failed to find any kind of redemption. I spent the next few hours in a state of shock, unable to think or feel anything. I was interrogated by the police, but I refused to answer any questions. I knew that anything I said could be used against me. Finally, a lawyer arrived. His name was Mr. Davis, and he was a seasoned criminal defense attorney with a reputation for winning impossible cases. "Mr. Hayes," he said, his voice calm and professional. "I'm here to represent you." I looked at him, my eyes filled with skepticism. "How did you know I needed a lawyer?" I asked. "Your mother called me," he said. "She's very worried about you." My heart sank. I had put my mother through so much pain already. Now, I had dragged her into this mess as well. Mr. Davis explained the charges against me. Obstruction of justice, aiding and abetting a fugitive, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The potential penalties were severe. "I need you to tell me everything, Mr. Hayes," he said. "I need to know the truth if I'm going to help you." I hesitated, then took a deep breath. I knew that I had to come clean. I couldn't keep lying, keep deceiving. I had to face the consequences of my actions. I told Mr. Davis everything. About my rivalry with Liam, about Sarah's betrayal, about my obsession with revenge, about my plan to destroy Liam, and about everything that had happened the previous night. He listened patiently, his expression unreadable. When I was finished, he remained silent for a long time. "Mr. Hayes," he said finally, "you've made some serious mistakes, but I believe that we can still salvage this situation, however. That depends on whether you're willing to cooperate with the authorities." I nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes," I said. Mr. Davis contacted the district attorney and negotiated a deal. In exchange for my full cooperation and testimony against Victor, the charges against me would be reduced. I agreed to the deal. I knew that it was the right thing to do. It was time to put an end to the lies, the deceit, and the violence. I testified before a grand jury. providing them with all the evidence I had gathered against Victor. My testimony helped to bring down Victor's entire criminal empire. But there was still the matter of Liam. I had to clear his name. I told the authorities everything about my plan to frame Liam, providing them with the evidence I had fabricated. They launched an investigation and quickly determined that Liam was innocent. Liam was released from custody, but the damage had been done. His reputation was tarnished. His life was in chaos. I visited him in his apartment a few days later. He was wary and distrustful, but he agreed to talk to me. "Why, Ben?" he asked, his voice filled with pain. "Why did you do this to me?" "I was consumed by revenge, Liam," I said. "I wanted to make you pay for what you did to me." "But I didn't do anything, Ben," he said. "I made a mistake, yes, but I didn't deserve this." "I know, Liam," I said. "And I'm sorry, I was wrong. I let my anger and resentment get the best of me." "What happens now, Ben?" he asked. "How can we ever go back to being brothers?" "I don't know, Liam," I said. "But I'm willing to try. I want to rebuild our relationship. I want to be a family again." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of skepticism and hope. "It's going to take time, Ben," he said. "A lot of time." "I know," I said, "but I'm willing to wait." The trial against Victor and his associates went on for months. I testified as a key witness, facing intense cross-examination from Victor's lawyers. In the end, Victor was convicted on multiple charges and sentenced to life in prison. His criminal empire was dismantled. As for me, I was given a reduced sentence for my cooperation. I spent a few years in prison paying for my crimes. During my time in prison, I had a lot of time to reflect on my life. I realized that my obsession with revenge had destroyed everything that mattered to me. I had lost my family, my friends, and my sense of self. When I was released from prison, I was a changed man. I was determined to make amends for my past mistakes and to live a life of honesty and integrity. I reached out to my mother and Liam, and we began the slow, painful process of rebuilding our relationship. It wasn't easy, but we were all committed to making it work. I also reached out to Sarah. She had moved away and started a new life. She had found peace and happiness. We talked for a long time, forgiving each other for the mistakes of the past. We agreed to stay in touch, but we both knew that we could never be more than friends. As for my wealth, I donated most of it to charity, using it to help people who had been victims of crime and violence. I realized that true wealth was not measured in dollars and cents, but in the quality of my relationships and the impact I had on the world. My life was not perfect. I still had regrets, still had scars, but I had learned from my mistakes, and I was determined to live a better life. In the end, I found redemption, not in revenge, but in forgiveness, not in wealth, but in love, and not in power, but in humility. The scars of the past may never fully heal, but they serve as a reminder of the lessons I have learned and the person I have become. I finally understood that true strength comes not from seeking revenge, but from choosing forgiveness, healing, and hope. And that's the story of how my brother almost destroyed me, and how I almost destroyed him, but how we both found a way to come back from the brink.